Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's about 1 o'clock here on the 31st of August, 2024, and I'm here to give an update and maybe a little bit of education as well on the trifecta that creates an alt season. We're going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive today, so make sure you stick around for the whole thing because every piece of content inside of this video is going to feed into the next piece. So pay really close attention. I'm going to do my best to be brief, be informative, and be done. So we'll go ahead and get into all of this. But as you all know, this is not financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. You're responsible for your own trades, manage your own risk, do your own research, and this is always just my opinion on the market. So let's go ahead and move on into the charts. So this, of course, is the end of August. Typically, moving into, from a seasonality perspective, moving into September and October, generally speaking, is typically bearish. So what I'm about to talk about today might be a little bit of a contrarian to that particular outcome. So what I want to look at here, I want to take a look at the importance behind all three of these different factors in the cryptocurrency market. We're going to be talking about Bitcoin. We're going to be talking about Tether dominance, which, if you don't know what Tether is, it's basically the digital version of the dollar, at least one of the, and is the most dominant form of the digital dollar. And we're also going to be looking at the dominance of Bitcoin itself compared to the rest of the cryptocurrency market. So let's just talk about Bitcoin first. All right, so what I want to point out here, is we've been talking about this 50 simple moving average on the daily. And the last time we talked about this, let me just zoom in here so we can talk just a little bit about this. We talked about this all the way going back into here. And I said, hey, if we move up past that, chances are pretty good we're going to get to this 100 and 200 simple daily moving average cluster. And that is exactly what happened. We actually got above it. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this because it's not really relevant anymore. It's come and gone. So we got above both the 50 and the 100. We also got above the 200. We stayed above it for 3 days. We closed up above it here. We stayed above the next day, that's day 2. We stayed above it the next day, day 3, and then we broke down below the 100 and the 200. And I was also talking about the fact that if we didn't continue to trade above that, we were going to start to see that death cross form, and that's what happened. So the 100 simple moving average and the 200 simple moving average have created a bearish formation, but that doesn't always necessarily mean that the price is just going to go straight down from here. And actually, more times than not, the opposite happens, which is basically what happened back here. This was a 6% day that we had on Bitcoin. This was back on August 23rd. It was a great day. We got above that 50, which we had been fighting for so long. We got above it. But as you can see here, it got met with a decent amount of selling. So now that we're here, let's just take a look at our indicators and see what what we're being faced with now. All right, so from a daily perspective, the daily wave is still definitely pointing down at the moment. You've got the yellow and the red wave just kind of in the neutral zone, and the white wave is still, it's still up here in that bullish control zone where it has been. I mean, if you go all the way back here, it's been up here all the way since July of 2023. So it's been up here for, over a year. And so I don't really have any reason to be super bearish longer term just because of that. We did create a series of, here's a low, here's a lower high, and a lower low, and a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. So we've been continuing to correct. This is not impulsive at all. It's very, very corrective. So I'm not going to get super bearish until we can actually start to make a new high. So if we get above 70,000, 70,100, things are going to start to look better. So this is just Bitcoin from a price action perspective, looking at some indicators and just looking at, just simple moving averages, and then looking at the Wave Master indicator as well. We don't have any hidden bearish divergence or anything like that. So we've got a high here, we've got a lower high here. If you take a look at the indicator, we've got a high here, and we've got a lower high here. I'm just looking at the green wave, right? You take a look at that, it's the same. There's no divergence there, meaning it doesn't create the opposite effect, right? If we had a lower high here and a higher high on the indicator, that would be really, really bearish, but that's not what happened. Yeah, we got a rejection right above those moving averages, but from a stochastic standpoint, which is what the Wave Master is built off of, it is not, it doesn't look super bearish. Okay, so again, that's just Bitcoin's price action perspective. Of course, we've got our all-time high up here at about 73.8, 73.9. We've got our lows back here, and from what I can tell, right, again, this looks very corrective. So what I'm prepared to look at is the fact that we've got potentially a 1, 2, and then a 1, 2, 3, 4 going into wave 5, which will go into wave 4 and go into a wave 5. So there is great potential that we could continue to see that movement to the upside. I tend to believe that this is the low, at least for the time being, and that we're likely going to start to see price action move higher. But now, what does that mean for altcoins? Okay, so let's just take a look at a couple different things. So let's take a look at Tether dominance before we start to look at Bitcoin dominance. So if we take a look at Tether dominance on the daily, right? Let me just zoom out here, because I've done a lot of educational articles on TradingView about this in particular. We've got our bump and run reversal, which in its early days was called the bump and run formation. People didn't like that because the acronym was BARF, but that is literally what tends to happen. I mean, you can see here in this example from 99-2000, we had a nice regular looking trend line. It was trending very naturally, and then we had the bump to create a more accelerated approach, creating a little bit of a bubble. We broke that trend line, and then we broke the lead-in trend line, and we went all the way back down basically to where it started. Now, I'm definitely not going to say, I'm going to move this out of the way, I'm not going to say that Tether dominance is going to go all the way back down below 1%. What I'm actually looking for is I'm looking for a move down to about 2%. If we break that 2% level, it's definitely going to come back down here to about 1.5. Breaks 1.5, it's going to go down to this level right here, which is going to be at about 1%. And I'm just looking at these levels based off of the price action, or at least the dominance action way back here in 2018, 2019. So what should happen is, and well, we've already seen this, right? We saw a rejection of this trend line. This is that lead-in trend line, and here's our bump, right? So we had a rejection. We fell through, rejected it very, very, very nicely. I'm really happy with the way that we rejected off of that particular trend line. Now I want to see us break, continue to break those trend lines that have been created. So we've got this guy right here. If we can break this guy, then this becomes more and more likely to happen. And I tend to believe that it is going to happen. We are likely going to go all the way down to 2% or less. Now, how much of that is going to be realized in Bitcoin versus the rest of the crypto atmosphere? Well, that's where we take a look at dominance from a Bitcoin perspective. So let's take a look at Bitcoin dominance. And, we were talking about this all the way back here, saying that, we just continue to trade inside of this. And I've got a lot of different things going on this chart. So let me just bring this down here just to kind of show the different cycles that I am looking at. So we've got a cycle here that started where we had the breakdown. And then we had a peak right here where we had a breakdown. And the next level is going to be here, and this is on October 18th, which, again, that tends to be, at the time period where things will get better to buy. I will put it that way, better to buy at the end of October. It's usually when that happens. I do expect something's going to happen somewhere around this day. Now, what that means, though, is that Bitcoin dominance likely is going to continue to kick up just a little bit. But again, I've got my peaks marked here, and I also have my valleys marked. So I've got a low here, which is back on January 8th of 2018. If anybody was around back then, you will remember that that is basically where everything was popping off, right? You had the bull run of 2017, which was basically this big green arrow, right? We had altcoin, we had our first push, a pullback, our second push, a pullback, and then our last bubble pop, that was right here. And then we had a long period of time where we just continued to watch alts bleed a bit. And then, back here in January, again, January of 2021, we had our top where we had alt season again. We came right back down. We went all the way up here from 72%, 73% down to 40%, 39%. But our valley was here, and this was on January of 2022, right? So you're starting to hear a couple of the same months, January. So we've got January, we had the bubble pop. January, we had the bottom for alts, and we saw a big alt run. And that basically lasted all the way until January of 2022. Now, I have a projection here of January of 2026. Although, if you take a look at these green arrows that I have outlined, they go down at a much faster trajectory as what I've outlined here. So what I tend to actually believe is going to happen is we're probably going to see something like this going into like April or May of 2025. And then we'll probably just kind of move sideways for maybe the rest of the year. But what that means, though, in the short term, if I go and just kind of hone in just a little bit more on what this price action looks like from a Bitcoin dominance perspective, it does look very, very good for this to be the completion, right? We have an A, B, C here down into a 4, and then we've got basically an A, B, let me just get that right. We have an A, B, C into an A, B, C into a B, A, B, C into our third wave, and then we'll go fourth wave, and then we're going to go up for that fifth wave. And it typically, from an ending diagonal perspective, it does tend to be in a bit of a zigzag. And if I ignore this wick right here, what I'll just say is this is starting to come down very, very nicely, and it's very possible we get a little bit of an alt push here in the coming weeks, but likely Bitcoin is going to increase dominance a bit. I do tend to believe that Bitcoin's likely going to run a bit, and that would take us into that mid to end of October area, where I do tend to believe that somewhere in this frame, somewhere in these next 2 to 3 months, there is going to be a turn, and likely that is when altcoins are going to get a significant relief rally. But more than that, I think a lot of them are actually going to be outperforming Bitcoin in a very serious way. Now, of course, I can always be wrong, but if I go to a weekly time frame, let's go to a weekly time frame and just take a look at this here for a moment. And I'm going to go to a different chart layout here. I want to take a look at this on a weekly time frame. I've got a couple different indicators on here. So I have some divergence indicators that I've put on here. I haven't used these in a long, long time. But what you'll notice is the bullish divergence indicators did a very, very good job of determining where there was going to be a pop. Now, the bearish divergence indicators, those have been on a weekly time frame. Those have been kind of, hinting that like something big is about to happen. And, fuel that with the fact that on this rise, we are seeing bearish divergence on the weekly RSI. So even if this does tend to move up just a little bit more, we've still got bearish divergence. But we are no longer in the bullish control zone, which we were back in October of 2023. And we are in the neutral zone here as of August of 2024. And this is in the weekly time frame. So give it a few weeks. But this is what is more than likely going to happen. I would say that this is the probable scenario. Of course, anything can happen, but that's what I'm looking at from a probability standpoint. Okay. So I've got a couple comments here in the chat. I'm going to take a look at a couple different things that have been requested, so I will go ahead and do that. But this is what I'm looking at from Bitcoin dominance, from Tether dominance, and from like the Bitcoin price action. And then let's go ahead, one last thing before I start to look at other items. Let's take a look at total 3. All right, so we've got total 3 here, right? And if I just look at this from a higher time frame perspective, this looks very, very much like it wants to go to $2.7 trillion. Now, is that actually going to happen? And we're talking about Bitcoin, sorry, not Bitcoin. This is talking about the altcoin space, not including Bitcoin and not including Ethereum. Is it possible that that can actually happen? Well, it certainly is possible. From a probability standpoint, I think $2.7 trillion is further away than we expect that it probably is. I think it's absolutely possible. But I think things like Solana really have to take hold in the mainstream, like from an institutional standpoint. I think Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're already out there. Solana had a good ETF launch in Brazil. So there's going to be a lot of good stuff that's going to be coming out of that. But it looks like it wants to go to 2.7 trillion. Short term, though, I really don't expect it to go past about 1.6 to 1.8 trillion. Now that's a lot, right? You can't deny it. That's a lot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do just a couple measurements here. I'm going to take this dominant pivot low right here, which again, you'll notice that this indicator did say that there was some divergence. We saw a warning from a bearish divergence standpoint. And then let's just go ahead and do the pullback and see what we get. All right, so I'm going to do, let me put this here. Okay, and let's go ahead and add on our 2618, 3618, and then let's get the 4618 on here. So we've got a lot of different things on here. I'm going to do it on a log scale, and let's just see what we get. So from a wave 3 standpoint, if this is wave 1 and this is wave 2, and again, we're looking at this from a wave perspective on all of the altcoins minus Ethereum, right? Our wave 3 right here at this 2618, it looks really, really good. That's a decent rejection off of that, which means we should be coming down, correct, which we've done. And I believe that that correction is complete, or at least that's my opinion at this time. So we've got the 3618, which is right up here, and this is going to be at about 1 trillion. That would make a lot of sense from a rejection standpoint, but I also tend to believe we're probably going to go higher, and this goes up to about $1.5 trillion. So that's where I'm looking at. We'll say 1.3 to 1.8, somewhere in there, likely is where this is going to land. I think that 2.7 trillion is a little bit off the table. We did do a real good retest of this 382 from a larger fib pull, and so that's where that target, that 2.7 trillion, comes from. I just don't know if we're going to get that anytime soon. I would say something like that would be years away, assuming that crypto bubble doesn't like completely pop. So that's where that's sitting at. All right. Let's go ahead. I've got a couple questions about NTRN and Voxel. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. And then I will take a look at IWM at the very end. I wanted it to be a crypto video, so I'll get into IWM here in just a minute. So let's take a look at NTRN USDT. All right, so looking at this on a daily perspective, let me go back to my my normal chart layout here. So I see a very, very strong support right here, and this is based off of these different areas of resistance back here, this support here, and the fact that we closed above it on the daily here. We did have a little bit of bullish divergence, so we had a lower low on the price, and we didn't quite break that low on the indicator as well. So if we just zoom in on that, let's just go ahead and just take a look at this again. We had a lower low on the price, and then from an indicator perspective, we did have a higher low. And if we extend this out a little bit, it is possible that this could just continue to drop down a little bit, and we would like to see a bounce off of that, which should translate to another retest of this, and then a breakout above that. If this happens, what we're going to start to see, again, I'm on the daily. This is our 50 daily simple moving average, but let's just take a look at this right here. So we've got this, right? So now you can start to see a little bit of a channel. So now that we've discussed that, let's go ahead and put a channel on it, because there is something that I think that a lot of people don't really pay a whole lot of attention to, and they should. So let's go ahead and do this. We'll do the top, and then let's get the channel on there where we've got the evidence of the divergence right here, the bullish divergence. It started to create that channel. We had a high here, we had a lower high here, we had a low here, we had a lower low here, then we had a lower high here. But again, if we break out above that, chances are pretty good this is going to start to see price action going from a breakout up here to this area, which is at about 67 cents. Now we're at 36 cents. So we're really talking about 100% from where we're at right now. The last few times that the Wave Master has given a buy signal, we've got this large area right here, but that yellow wave and the red wave really kind of neutralized back here close to the bottom. And then we had the bullish divergence here where we were also getting a buy signal, which also yielded in some significant gains. If you measure that out, that was like 35%. But what we're looking at, even from here, again, we're looking at like 85%. So this looks good. That median right here is right where I'm kind of expecting there to be a bounce. And again, looking at this, that could be the formation of, a left shoulder, a head, and a right shoulder, which means that breakout target would go roughly right there. And if we measure it, let's see if the measurement, if it all measures out, yeah, that 100% would be right there at like 72 cents. So if we do get that breakout, it would make a whole lot of sense for us to get to that target. So I would be cautious above that level. If we do get the alt season that we're looking for, I would expect that there's probably going to be a breakout above this. But for a shorter term trade, this is the level that should be your significant resistance. So that's where I would be cautious in that particular area. Oh, sorry, I also forgot to mention, that's also where the 200 daily moving average is as well. You can see it. I ignored it because it blended in with the channel, but this red moving average here is the 200 daily moving average. And as long as you're trading below that, it's going to continue to trend down, which is flowing right in line with this channel expansion. So that's one more piece of evidence that that's going to be an area that's going to be hard to get through at least the first time. If we break through it, chances are it's going to be significant, but at least that first attempt is likely going to fail. Okay, Voxel. I can't say that I am familiar with this guy. It had a really good week back here, starting back on Friday the 16th, going through Tuesday the 20th. That was a significant movement to the upside, 124% from open to close, not including the wicks. But let's just zoom out a little bit and see what this looks like. All right. So this is a good example of something that, I take great caution with. First thing, let's just go ahead and measure from the bottom to the top here. We are getting ready to tap that 50, and on the daily, you've got the 50 simple moving average at about 15 cents. So it doesn't look terrible. But let's go out to a weekly standpoint. Looking at this, there's huge upside potential here. Oh, and look at the weekly. A breakdown at the 50 and the 100. So it stopped at the 50 simple moving average on the weekly, the 50 and the 100 simple moving average. We do have signs of bullish divergence here on this. So I would say as long as it stays above 13 cents, right? And let's just go ahead and throw a P&L on this and see what this looks like from a profit and loss standpoint, from a risk to reward standpoint. Does this make sense? So let's just go ahead and throw that on there. Let's pull that guy up. Again, we want to give it a little bit of room. Now this is a 31% stop loss, which is why crypto is so risky and volatile. that 31% stop loss, but what's your upside? Okay, so let's just level this out. There's a level right here. It's probably a little hard to see. We've got candle bodies opening and closing here, resistance here. We've got wicks all around, and right here it broke down and tried to push through twice and failed. That's at about $1.49. We'll call it $1.50. So I would say that's going to be an area of significant resistance. The next level is going to be this level right here. This is probably not a surprise based on all the candle closures, but then you're going to have this level up here at about $4. Now, yeah, you've got a 31% stop loss, but what's your upside on this? Are you willing to risk 31% for the potential that you could make, and let's just even take it down here to that $1.47, 800%. If you do kind of hold out for like the ultimate target, that's 2,300%. Now, the probability decreases the higher that you go, which is why I would go for this kind of a target. And what a lot of people don't do is they don't size right. And what I mean by that is this is a 31% stop loss. I see a lot of people putting in way too much money into something based off of the reward. Chances are, honestly, in crypto, chances are better you're going to lose that 31% than you're going to gain the 800%. That is the way that this market works. But the chance is always there, and the potential is always there. It just depends on how you're managing your trades, right? So if you've got, $500 that you put into an asset, right? Are you willing to lose $150 of that $500 for the potential that you can 7x, 8x that $500, right? Are you willing to risk $150 in order to make, $4,000 in profit? That is where crypto tends to be a little more lucrative, but the risk is always there, and a lot of people forget that. So this trade is very good. Of course, I would feel much, much better if it got above this level here at about 42 cents. But even at 42 cents, you're still looking at 150% profit. So on $500, well, now you're looking at $1,250 at the end of the day. You could shave some profit there and then wait. You take out your initial investment. So take out the $500, so you still have $750 invested, and you could take that $500, put it somewhere else. Roll it into stocks, roll it into Bitcoin, Ethereum, whatever you want to do. Gold, silver, it really doesn't matter. You take that $500 that you originally put in, you still have $750, and unless this guy goes to zero, you're still in good shape. You're not going to lose your money. Again, unless it goes to zero, which is always a possibility. But you take that $750 that's there, and now you're looking at that to go, up another, 200%, almost 300%. Well, that $750, that now turns into, $2,000. It turns into $2,500. So then you just cash that all out, right? And pay yourself, put the money in the bank, roll it into something else, whatever you want to do. Just make sure that whatever you do, you're rolling it into something that makes sense and isn't a complete gamble. Like anything crypto related is gambling. But, you can give yourself an edge, and you can make educational decisions based on whatever trades you want to make. Just make sure that you know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and if you're still in the trade, is the original reason why you got into that trade still valid? That's where a lot of people get lost. Okay, so we've taken a look at NTRN, we've taken a look at Voxel. Let's go ahead and take a look at IWM, and then we'll wrap things up. All right, so IWM. Looking at this guy, we had a really, really nice recovery, and really, I was rooting for all of these small caps. On the weekly time frame, we haven't seen this in like Dow Jones or in NASDAQ or SPY, the S&P, right? retest after retest after retest of this 200 weekly simple moving average. It just hasn't happened, right? We broke through it, and then we did the retest, and we bounced off of it significantly every time. But this last bounce was very, very significant. I was expecting, as you can see, I put this out here a long, long time ago, that we would break out and likely get up to this target between 220 and 224, and that's where we got. And we were looking at this from an accumulation and a distribution range, right? So we were accumulating right here. You can see I've got this labeled, and again, this was just a request. I haven't looked at this in weeks, right? I said if we break out of this range, what we're likely going to do is we're going to expand up, and that is literally exactly what happened, right? We saw several retests of this 200 simple moving average, but we retested this area up here, which is where we had this distribution range, and we had this guy right here, which really faked a lot of people out. And we see it on both sides, right? We see areas where we are just bouncing, right? We had little cases here, but we had this was very significant, very pronounced, and a lot of people thought that this is exactly what that was, but they were not the same. The market dynamics are different than they were in late 2021. So from an IWM standpoint, I am not interested in it at the current time. If we can get back up above this high here, I would say that it's possible for us to go back up to about 245. But from right here, things just, I don't know, doesn't feel right. And then from a seasonality standpoint, I would wait until the end of October. From like a stock perspective, I would wait till the middle to the end of October for a correction to occur before I take on any additional risk in the stock market. So that's what I've got on IWM. I don't plan on getting into the S&P 500 or NASDAQ at this time, but that's just what my thoughts are on IWM at a glance. Really needs to take out this high to show a true recovery. Otherwise, this is just a significant dead cat bounce, and it's possible that if we can come back down here, if we do break down below that 200 weekly simple moving average, we're going to come back down to 180 probably, somewhere here in the middle. So be very, very cautious with the stock market in particular going into September and October. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end it here. It's been 32 minutes and 21 seconds, so hopefully this helped you guys out. If this video did help you in any way, shape, or form, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, share, and if you need access to our Discord, if you need access to our indicators, if you need access to our trades, where we do lots of options day trading every single day. We have a lot of good collaboration on the Discord. You can find all the information on how to access the private area on our Discord server and access to all the indicators and all the trades. Find all of that information on BitDoctor.org. Feel free, as always, to send me a DM on X, on TradingView, and also on YouTube if you need any help in any way, shape, or form. Feel free. You know how to get a hold of me. Last but not least, wherever you are in the world, I hope you're having a good day, good night, and a great evening. Take care, everyone.